that to what's getting ready to happen. Jeff Dade, you have the mic right now. Thank you, brothers. Let's do what you do.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So encouraged in 2021 by tribal leaders amongst the Squamish, Anishinaabe, Tobique, Algonquin, and Mohawk nations to personalize acknowledgements. In 2022, I offer this dedication. I know that we exist in a time of profound reckoning with the pain and tragedies that have created our society. I identify as Black American, and with pride, I stand with my ancestors whose very blood, bone, flesh, and skill are the wealth that created and secured this nation. In the face of centuries of entrenched anti-Black discrimination, harm, and induced inferiority, I dedicate my vocation to countering bigotry, the reclamation of Black heritage, and recognizing the full spectrum of Blackness. I am aware of the Puyallup tribe and other Coast Salish people who, since the beginning of time, have cared for and lived on the land I stand on today. I understand that their removal was forced and that this living community continues to fight to live in their ancestral homes. I invest in reckoning with Black and Latin socioeconomic well-being, stopping Asian and Pacific Islander and LGBTQ+ hate, and inviting white allies to decenter whiteness as we all recomprehend what should be and discover new futures for our children. I promise to be a positive force for pro-social equity. Thank you.
Bruh, I don't know if y'all just heard what he just did, but he brought that in the first 10 minutes of this meeting. So that's just letting y'all know what's getting ready to happen today. We got some great things happening, man. Thank you so much, Jeff Dade, from the heart, man. That was absolutely amazing. I appreciate you. I love being able to follow and run alongside of you. Absolutely beautiful, man. Thank you so much. As we move forward, before we even start anything, to be honest with you guys, I just wanted to go over last year real quick and just do a year in review, because I think sometimes we get so embedded in what we're doing on a day-to-day basis that we don't realize what we've done as a unit together. And when I say as a unit together, it doesn't matter if you were at an event, if you could not make an event. We know that your heart, your passion was at that event, and you would have been there if you could have been there. A lot of things are going to change coming in this next year. But last year was a very successful year for all of us and what we were able to do in this community. The task force starting last February, we put together the Lens of Equity mini series, which focused on diversity, equity, access, and inclusion, and really highlighted the people, the policy, the practice, and promotion of this work that we are still talking about today. This is work that will never change. This is work that's going to always stay at the forefront of what it is that we do in the task force, which has allowed us to make it its own platform. Over that 4-month time span, we had over 500 attendees that came to support. We had many of you guys that actually did the presentations because that was something that was on your heart. If you guys did not get to see that, please go online, check the website. We have all 4 series that were actually recorded. In March, we actually had an intimate conversation that supported women of color in the workplace. It was absolutely beautiful. It was a 72-hour turnaround, but we ended up having 150 people that jumped online. Jeff Dade, as a man, came in to support the women on that panel. It was an absolutely beautiful conversation. It was not recorded because that's how deep it was, but we hope to bring something like that again this year. In June, myself, Workforce Central, members of the task force, we went to our national conference and we presented via the task force at the NOB conference, casting a wider net, asking them, are they the bridge or are they the barrier for our communities? We ended up actually winning the best presentation that they never knew existed. It was crazy, but we ended up doing some great things out there, and they really loved us, asked us to come back for that. We threw 9 events through Collaboration for a Cause. I know that this community really needed a lot of things, and you guys came together, you guys supported. Some of these events were 3 weeks between each other, and big shout out to Kelly and that whole team, Tim and the rest of them. You guys did some things that were crazy. I don't know how you guys pulled off them half the time, but you did. With those 9 events going into the last winter warm-up, we put out an estimated $300,000 in donated goods back into this community. We served 1,100 families in the Pierce County communities, which is absolutely amazing. We supported Hire 253, which had over 160 attendees from jobs, community services. A lot of you guys and your partners, you guys were out at People's Park. You guys did that. A lot of amazing things. Like I said, we had a beautiful year. Even if you guys don't see it half the time or because you guys are busy, we all recognize that this is a voluntary group. But if you look at it 2 months later, COVID later, holidays later, we still got 65 of us here ready to go and make things happen. That tells you that they cannot break us. We stayed consistent over the last 2 years in being together, bringing in some, losing some. They all come back. Everyone comes back home. I've always said this is the new Motown of Pierce County. We are stars, and all we got to do is report, support, and be with each other. Before I get started and let things go, I was given 4 words leaving 2020-21, and they meant something to me going into this year. And I was told, as we move forward in the work that we do, we're going to have to reassess, realign, reassign, and redefine what it is that we're doing in the work that we are doing. I don't know if this person meant for those to be with me, but they hit me hard when I heard them. And so I'm gonna leave those with you guys. As we go into the work that we do this year, reassess why you're doing that work, realign and redefine and reassign those that don't need to be there compared to those that need to be with you in this work. Because that's what I'm doing right now. It's nothing personal. It's just I know that I want to stay great and I'm great with you guys. So I'm redefining a lot of things and redefining what this group really looks like as we move forward. Happy New Year. Happy 2022. Let's get this going, man. It's going to be a beautiful thing, but I'm going to go ahead and step away because I'm going down.
Okay, so we're getting ready to go into our presentation. Do you want to do your introductions and for the presenters first, and then we'll turn it over to Chloe and start getting and get started into our actual presentation for this month?
Yes, I will. See, and I thought I was done talking, but I lied. I'm gonna go ahead and take some more stage time. We good. We good. I'm gonna get what I can. Today, I am proud to be able to announce 3 very good friends of mine, family to me. They're powerhouses in this community. They are the future of what all this looks like, and it's just an honor for them to just want to be here with us today. I have Miss Drea Baines. She is a transplant, but she loves this. She loves this city. She is the CEO of Impossible Consulting, a firm that prioritizes and assists different VPs as far as in building their own business, and that's what she is. She is a business. She's not in the business, she is a business. And I'm very proud to be able to call her my friend. Her and her husband have a Black-owned construction company, and it's actually incredible. They do support those coming out of the prison systems, a lot of things that the Bain family is doing. She is on the board of services, and I'm sorry, Drea, I always forget because there's so many acronyms when we talk about the pilot program that's going on right now. So I apologize. I'm sure she'll talk about that later. But man, I just love that you are here. If you don't know about Miss Drea Baines, y'all better ask somebody and y'all better reach out to her because she is a powerhouse in this community. We also have Brendan Nelson. Most of you guys probably know Brendan Nelson. He is the co-chair of the Hilltop Engagement Community. His family and everything is about Hilltop. He is about Hilltop. He is about this community. His passion carries left and right. He is somebody that I can reach out to day and night. He will always pick up that phone for me. He supports everything that I have done from the day that I have met him, and just blessed to have him on this panel as well. We also have Director Jeff Dade, who his heart, his passion, if you've ever heard this man speak, it's incredible. He is really about this community. He is about the change of this community, the passion, and where we're going with this community. So when we looked at a panel, it couldn't be anything but these 3. And forgive me, Lawrence Garrett was not able to make it. He is battling an illness as well, but he sends his love and his respect. He would also be on his panel. So over the next hour or so, you may hear things that he had sent us to share with you guys, but he could not make it. He sends his love and he apologizes for that. But welcome to this panel. Welcome to the collaboration for all of us, the past, present, and future. And I hope you guys are ready because they're about to just bring the noise right now.
All right. Okay, thank you so much for introducing the speakers. All right, so let's just let's take a moment and just inhale and exhale. One of the things that I can say on this journey that we've been on We all have had the same similar obstacles, barriers to face. We're facing them all together. We've been working on ourselves. We've been digging in and trying to figure out where are the safe spaces for us to communicate, to commune. Where are the safe spaces for us to fellowship? Where are the safe spaces for us to be honest and transparent about where we are in our lives, how we've treated one another, how we treated, family, whatever, how we've interacted in our community. Are we movers, change makers, investors in our communities? Are we making change happen generationally? Are we having those difficult generational conversations? I mean, raise your hand or put something in the chat if you since I don't know, since 2020, you really, delved deep into really wanting to have these socially conscious conversations. You can raise your hand, you can clap your hand, you can do all the stuff you want to do. Like you've been in the trenches. Like Shelly, look, I've taken classes, I'm reading books, I'm in these different groups, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I'm going to ask this question again at the end, but I talked about it with the group yesterday as we were prepping, like how do we want to have this? So we're going into this discussion. I love to have a good couch conversation. If you know anything about me, conversations are where you get the good stuff. You don't have to be so stiff, and it doesn't have to be so rigored, as you're trying to get answers in Q&A. So we're about to have a real good conversation. So I want you to envision that you have Jeff, Brendan, and Drea, and even tomorrow when you can come on, just sitting around a table, just chopping it up and having a conversation. And this title today is about collaboration for all of us. So when I was asking those questions, ask that to yourself. Throw some stuff in the chat if you want to. What have you done when you left those places? Have you put things in action? Have you really taken things from what you learned there and put them into action? Had more conversation? Have you brought ideas and things back to your workplace? Have you brought ideas and things back to your family? Have you really truly done that work? Have you dug in? What have you done from those spaces and places that you've been sitting in for like the last 2 years? We're just gonna call it 2 years even, flat. What have you done with all the things you've learned? What have you done with all the things you learned? So please feel free to share that in the chat. And if you need some time to let that marinate, feel free to share it. Now, the rules of engagement as we go into our conversation with our great speakers today. You can ask questions in the chat. Between Chloe and I will be monitoring, so that way I'll be able to catch them. Make sure you put question for Drea or question for Jeff or question for Brendan if you have one. So that way we'll know who to direct the question to, and we'll try to monitor and capture as many of your questions as possible. But please make sure that you share what is it that you've done over these last 2 years that are action oriented. So let me rephrase that, action oriented. It's really cool to come into these spaces, take classes, learn, hear stories, but then what do you do with all of that knowledge? What do you do with all that revelation knowledge that you receive in these spaces? Now, these speakers have a plan around the past, present, and future, but we're going to kickstart this off with the future. So, Chloe, if you could bring up the slide, and I should see our panelists. I'll see them. I'll just get started. So this past, present, and future in collaboration for all of us. It takes the past to create a new present, but it also takes the past and the present to change the future. I don't know if you all have seen the story that got released today about the Plessy versus Ferguson outcome, and what it took a generation of generations later to actually change a verdict and reset a man's name because he was white enough to sit in the front of the train, but he was still black, right? So you gotta, but generations later, you see a grandson and a granddaughter standing together, flipping the script. So it's not about what happened in the past, it's about what we're doing today. How are we changing our future? It's not about browbeating our grandfathers and grandmothers about what they did. They did the best they can with what they knew to do. Wherever they stood, but what are you doing today? And the past isn't your responsibility, but the future is. What are you doing today? So next slide. Next slide. Jeff, do you want to start before we start the video?
Nope, this is perfect.
Okay. All right. So I don't hear the audio, Chloe. Can anybody hear it?
Nope.
You have to share your audio, Chloe. So Jeff, can you just talk about what this video was about while Chloe's working on it?
It's my pleasure to. Morning, everyone. So this video is an inspiration. This is a potential Black future. When we throw ourselves into the future, in my discipline and finance, oftentimes we think about it, it's very abstract to throw yourself into the future and understand who that person is, right? And so this was something that I found that was made by some Black filmmakers in this country. And it's something that's a little short 5-minute thing, but I found it it's inspiring. And I wanted to use this with my colleagues to use this to set us off today, just to kind of think about where is it that we're going to, and how do we seat ourselves in what we're doing today to get there. So that's what you're about to see. Enjoy.
We still can't hear it. All right, well, we're gonna let her work on the sharing her audio. Don't know what's going on with our tech today, but hey, it's 2022. So Jeff, is in that video, it shows the time capsule. What was in that time capsule?
In the time capsule, you'll see, we'll see how hopefully that we get through, because the way they do it is much better than what I'll narrate.
Okay.
But think of it as like from that we are the ancestors. If we're looking forward, 100 years from now, what's going on? What do we do? And these young people find on a beach, they find a time capsule, and it has an elder that's us talking about what it is that we did in Freedom Summer and how we loved you before you ever existed, that kind of thing.
Okay, Chloe, you want to try it again? There we go.
Black magic, black this, black everything, black habits, black habits, black medicine, yeah, everything, black chucks, everything, black hug, black love, everything.
Yeah, what are you listening to?
Flowers, why they still give black roses, everything, black child,
It's old school. My grandma said it was her grandma's favorite.
Skin noir, French noir, here you are, black. Everything you need, better believe you are that. Skin noir, French noir, here you are, black. Everything you need, better believe you are.
Shit. Freedom Summer.
Peace, child. I am your ancestor.
Yo.
My time has come and gone now.
Insane.
And though you may not know of us, know that we loved you in advance. We anticipated your brilliance and broke what chains that we could to build the world that you deserve. Tell me, do they teach a Freedom Summer in the year of 2020?
Brianna, Titi, we lost so many that summer. So much strange fruit. The pandemics of COVID-19 and police brutality. Something broke open in us. I don't have any words. Our people, we rose up everywhere. Every city, every night. We fought for you, for your freedom. I'll never forget those nights, those streets. 26 million strong.
26 million strong. The empire trembled, and suddenly there were cracks. Confederate flags banned. Public safety reimagined.
Can't get cops out of schools.
Workers striking in defense of Black lives.
We will say her name.
The WNBA, then the NBA, game after game canceled. Dangerous electeds voted out of office. We tore down the statues of our oppressors. Our people began to dream and fight for a world without policing, a world free of the brutal grind of capitalism.
I am somebody. And I deserve.
We carried our people to office.
With our fists in the air.
When cities started passing reparations bills, we wrote our own laws. And you are our wildest, freest dreams. We flooded the streets for you, for your health.
For your wealth. We spoke your liberation into being, into law, into land.
Child, if our work is not done, if you do not awaken every morning into Black power and Black love, then you must make your liberation whole. We are with you, and we know that you will win. Remember how we fought for you in the summer of 2020 and take back the power.
You were our mandate.
We have a mandate. And damn it, we gon' do it. Call and response. The mandate for Black people in this time. To avenge the suffering of our ancestors. To earn the respect of future generations. And be willing to be transformed in the service of the world. Call and response.
I'm gonna just let you sit and marinate on that for a minute. Chloe, put it on the next slide, but we're gonna sit here for a minute. I just want you to sit in that. We're not gonna move forward. I want you to just let that absorb that, inhale that in. Just gonna give you a few minutes. All right. So I put a question in the chat. And in the chat, I asked you, what is your statement that you have in mind for the future? And then I asked several questions after that. Now you might say, Shelley, I don't really know what that means, or I don't have an idea of what my statement would be, or you might very well have it. So during this conversation, we want you to share your statement. If you think you want to share your statement now, we can do that too. Is there anyone that has a statement they believe they want to share now? Okay. Well, we're going to give you some time to let you sit on that. But while you're thinking about it, I asked our speakers to be prepared to give us their response on their statement for the future. And I'm going to ask Drea, what is your statement you have in mind for the future?
So diversity of thought, skill, ability, and contribution is how we thrive together. Where they talked about it in the video, how our empire started to tremble and cracks formed. Those cracks, we fill them with our diverse skills, thoughts, and abilities, and contribute all of that to, filling them back up and building something stronger and more sustainable.
Thank you. Brendan, what's your statement that you have in mind?
Just thinking about this video and what we've just seen, it makes me think about we are bruised, but we are not broken. And it's up to each one of us to carry the mantle forward. And as we think back to what has been set for us, we use that as our foundation to continue to move forward.
Amen. All right. Okay. Mr. Jeff Dade, what is your statement that you have in mind for the future?
Absolutely. Connecting the future to the present and the past. Our future quality of life is indelibly connected to the community economic development we do today to correct the still active racial wealth gaps that founded America. That's what's on my mind every day.
All right. Mr. Tamar Jackson, do you have a statement in mind for the future?
Honestly, I would look at going off of a great friend of mine. There's nothing without us. All of this work that we are doing, it has to be done together. It cannot be done in just white spaces. We need to be in those spaces to make these changes sustainable, regardless on how uncomfortable you are, regardless on how comfortable you feel with the work that we are doing. None of this is possible without us being in those spaces. So use your platforms to raise us to those platforms so that we can all work and do this together to make this sustainable for those in the future.
All right. That's powerful. Does anybody else have a statement in mind they want to share? Because this is interactive. I mean, I know we're in a deep moment and that video was powerful, but we really do want to hear your voices in this moment.
The brilliance of our... Oh, sorry, Michael, go ahead.
Okay, who was that, Courtney?
Yes, but
okay.
Michael can go.
Okay, Michael, then Courtney.
The brilliance of our past shines through to light the path to the future. Be bright in every day, in every way.
All right, thank you. Courtney?
I'm gonna go with the old throwback of FUBU. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with that brand, but for us, by us. We have to do this together. This is not for anyone else but us, and it has to be done together by us. So Tamar, very, very consistent with what the message that you just shared. That really resonated with me. We're in this together, and we got to stick together to really reach the end goal. So that was my quote.
All right. Okay. So when we talk about future, let's hit on community. Let's hit on community. And let's talk about what does that mean for our Black future? What is the importance of community concerning our Black future? And any of the panelists can start.
So I'll start, and thank you so much for having me here today. Tamar, big shout out to even thinking of me to participate. I'm always super excited to talk about Black people, Black power, Black equity, Black money. So for me, community is a hot topic. It's usually a bid for like federal funding, right? When we talk about community engagement and community effort and all of that. But the reality is all of this community engagement still happens in a supremacist bubble through a supremacist lens. And those of us who are being taken care of by, that lens, so to speak, are still kind of stuck holding the bag, wondering what's next. And we continue to place folks in positions to make decisions for folks in our community. And these people have educations, they have degrees, they have years of experience in such and such a corporation or an organization. And we're still not hearing the collective genius of our communities. We're still not listening to our children and what they're experiencing and what they think will make it better. We're still not listening to our elders and what worked for them to get us to this day. We're still not respecting the hustlers, those of us who are able-bodied and working day and night in this capitalistic grind, right? We're still not listening to lived experience, and we're not respecting it as the genius that is meritocratic, right? So when we talk about community, for me, we need to flip it upside down. It can't be like, oh, here's the folks with the money, here's the folks with the millions of dollars of research and development who are looking at us from a lens or a microscope or a telescope saying this is what we need. No, we need to either come into the community and see what people are doing, because if you go to any one of our churches, I promise you, there's work being done. If you go to any one of our task force meetings, any one of our roundtables, any one of our happy hours, the work is being done. But if we have to continue to shift and focus our work and effort to match this supremacist meritocratic system, then we will never make it, right? We will continue to say, why are we grinding our wheels so hard into sand and not moving forward? So for me, community starts with our kids, our elders, our shopkeepers, our janitors. It starts with the people who are living every day, observing and experiencing what they're in. And then from there, figuring out solutions that are sustainable for all of us, that work for all of us, whether we're able-bodied or not, whether we're marginalized or not. Because if we don't, we'll start seeing our communities, like what's happening in Maine, become a declining population, where there's not enough diversity to keep it going, where there's not enough talent to keep people coming, where there's not enough programs or educational, outlets or apprenticeships or whatever it is to keep people going, right? They're going to move away and the town's going to disappear. So without that true grassroots effort, which is trusting the lived experience of our community, we're just continuing the cycle of raising dollars to keep people paid in a position to talk about problems.
Oh my goodness. What do you have for that, Brendan? I know you're ready. Thank you so much. That was powerful, Drea.
Drea just really said it all. I mean, we often sit and talk, her and I, just around this particular thought. And for me, I really believe that the folks who are in our communities are the experts in their communities. And one of the things that I've often been frustrated with is that we look at the work that needs to be done or the things that could be done in our communities, and we bring people in who have no idea of the history and the culture of these communities, right? And then we pay them the big dollars to do small focus groups and get the lived experience, get that expertise, and go write these reports and get these millions and millions of dollars based on the stories and the trauma of our people, right? And so I think it's extremely important that as we all continue to do the work that we are called to do, right? And I feel like we all have a calling to do what we are doing. We have a responsibility, a mandate, as it said in that video, to bring the stories and the history and the lives of those who are living this to the table. That's really what I try to do in my work, is looking for those folks who are experienced, and how do we get them those dollars? How do we get them the money that other folks are getting, right? And so I think there's so much more that we could be doing as a community to really uplift the voices of those in our communities. Jeff and I had a long conversation last night about just the preservation of those who have come before us. If you don't know George P. Riley, you need to look him up and know the history of him, and still learning that what he set forth was taken away, and those stories are continuing to shrink more and more because we're not bringing those lived experiences to the table.
So when you talk about
Can I say
community, go
Can I
ahead.
say something? Hey, my name is Nieners. I'm the executive director of Hope for Homies. I'm one of the first Hispanics, Mexicans who's been in prison for over 18 years and has been marginalized his whole life. English is my second language. I taught myself how to speak English through watching shows like Sanford and Son and Three's Company and Welcome Back, Kotter. So one of the biggest things is I hear what you guys are saying, but I think a lot of the conversation revolves around folks that are giving out that funding, and most of those folks are never at the table. You know, it's just always speaking to each other, and it becomes the same actions to this. I mean, the same response we get to the actions that we're trying to push out, and it comes to these folks that are never been in the system, never done nothing. And believe me, a lot of these cats that are out here doing this stuff ain't never been maced, they never been in the hole. I did 5.5 years in solitary confinement. I spent all my time in the hole. I did 18 years in the Supermax in West Complex, and I used to be hella active, all about it. My name rings bells in prisons and stuff. And now I run an outreach work where I work with youth empower. I work with youths out here in Casino Road and Everett. I work with Black and brown kids, and I stay focused. And I go into Echo Glen and I do groups for kids in there, and I do all this stuff for them. And I offer up jobs for people coming out of prison through the little funding that we get. I offer them the opportunity to have that chance to heal and to sit down and work on themselves, so that they can get the right job that they need, so they can go to the apprentices, to the construction job, so that they don't just show up and become another statistic and get fired when some dude tells them something. So I work with them through all that healing stuff. But one of the biggest things that I see a lot of times is that we always have the wrong people at the table, and it becomes a repetitive conversation every time. And I mean, believe me, I've been in a lot of these conversations, and I'm pretty sure y'all have too. And we've been in circles since generations. I mean, and if we don't put a stamp on it now and try to stop all that, our kids are going to be the next victims to this. And I'm talking about not just y'all kids, but my kids too, my brown kids, my kids that are on Casino Road on 128, and my little kids that are out there active. You know, and so today we have we now opened up a farm to allow our kids to come in from the juveniles that get out to come work. Today we'll have some of our youth working at the farm. We also offered up jobs for our adults that are coming out of prison. We offered them the opportunity to become navigators in our program to work and help out our youth and become mentors, because they got that life living experience. They're the ones that sat in the hole for years and seen what it was to not be around their kids. So they give that opportunity back. And we also started up a couple other businesses so that we can have them get the chance to move forward and not be stuck in the same gravel pit that we talk about, the same thing. Because I'm telling you, it's every day is a survival day for us, and we only know how to survive one way, and that's the street, hustling and grinding. And if we can't give them another outlet or an avenue to set themselves up for a better opportunity, and stop taking options out, just take options out and put opportunities in there, we ain't gonna get nowhere. And believe me, I come from the streets. I'm from the streets. I'll tell you, I've been shot 6 times. I've been in the system. I've been in the hole. I've been maced. I've been slammed. I've been tossed around. I've started my first charge at 10 years young. I was in Echo Glen. I shot someone in the mouth. 14, I got sentenced to 18. So it's like, so this is why I keep coming back to that. We need to have the right people on the table, people that are giving the funding to the folks that are not even cut or are speaking on it, but not having that life living experience. It's kind of sad. And I feel like there's other aspects of this conversation that we have to add into it. And I know a lot of people.
Thank you so much for jumping in. One, thank you for your story, sir. Thank you, because I've not met you, but thank you for joining us. That's just, to me, your points that you made speak to it resonates to what we've been talking about and what we are continuing to talk about. That crabs in a bucket mentality. Who are we when we do get the opportunity to sit at those tables? And Jeff, I want you to kind of can you bring us kind of full circle around that future when it comes to community?
Absolutely. And so much it resonates with me. One of the things when I think about, I'll go towards a positive note. This is how I think of the future. If we're working it backwards, this notion that in the future that being pro-Black will not equal being anti-white, right? That's the case today, but the idea that everyone will see this, that polarization is fake. We're talking about as people and being able to come together and absolutely having the right people at the table and being inclusive and getting outside of the status quo. That's what I see this group, damn sure with my panelists, my co-panelists, But in this group, I see faces that I know that you're doing something different all the time. And that's what we have to do to get to the future that we want to create. So part of this idea of, I was mindful as I was watching the video again for the 4th or 5th time today. One of the things that came to me is that what I saw was young people, and in the montage that happened, deep sadness, right? And also joy despite it and because coming through it. And I was really mindful today that, you know what, man, there are people that are looking at this, and what they probably see is violence. They see violence because that's what we've been baked in, right? They see, they're acting up. And I'm reminded of, I wish LG was here. I always get this quote wrong, but it's something that Beyonce said recently, the whole idea that if you have it, that's on the slide, Chloe, if you find it, please feel free to put that up there. But the idea that racism is so baked in and so normal in America that when we protest racism, it feels like we're being.
Yeah, I found it. You don't got to share it. You got, yeah.
There you go. This,
yeah.
And like, let this sink in if you haven't seen this before. And it is so deep and disturbing. Yeah. And I hope that people who haven't thought this way, I hope that you will take this and you'll let it sink in. This is what we have to get out of, right? The idea that if a man says, you know what, I want to kneel and respectfully and say like, hey, some things are not going well, and we need to stand up for that. But what I'm going to do is be respectful and kneel. To have that create an outcry, like you don't need to do, I don't even go to the thing. Y'all know what I'm talking about. It's not okay. We have to change some things because you're getting outraged because you've been programmed. All of us, we've been baked into these ideas that, don't up jump, don't do too much. You're being violent, right? So I'm so hopeful, y'all, that as we come together and we do more of this work today, I see these faces that I know and so many that I don't. Big homie Juan just now, just the idea that we're coming together and thinking about what has happened in the past, but to do something better today to create the future that we want. I know it sounds so simple and trite. It is real that it's happening right now, and we have to come together more. The last thing I'll say is that I have yet to find a stat on this, but a lot of times you'll find it's said that in Tacoma that we have more than the average level of human services for our size, right? Which is a good thing, right? But then also, as Drea so eloquently said, that creates competition, all these different things. A lot of the power that we have in closing for this segment is diffused, right? So we have these islands that are really powerful. If only we could throw this larger net and cinch it back in and be together. That's the move, and that's why I'm even part of the task force, especially, but you're all beautiful and you have great and you're amazing, everything, but you have your juice needs to be collected together and it's going to be even more powerful, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Tamar?
Yes, man, I was sitting back and just going off of what Jeff just said, and I was thinking about Trevor Noah. He had this quote, and he said, I like to stay very inclusive. And he said, if someone wants to be racist, I'm going to let them be that and I'm going to support them. But they can't enjoy the foods of the other nations that are in the country at the same time. So enjoy your potatoes. And at first I didn't get it, but it hit me. It was like, that's what makes all this so beautiful. It's because we are a community, and when we think about what a community looks like, it's like listening to your child. Who's going to tell you the truth out of anything? Your child, because they're not filtered. They haven't been conditioned to filter themselves. They tell you how they feel. They tell you their thoughts. It doesn't matter what it is. And we have to learn to start listening to the community the same way. The community is not going to lie to you. The community is going to tell you exactly what is happening at that moment. And we have to start listening to that, not assuming that we know the answer to Drea said it. We got to start coming from behind those fundings. We got to start coming from behind the desk. I went with Shelly a few years back and we were in Bellevue. And I mean, to be honest with y'all, that was I'm born and raised here. It was my 3rd time in Bellevue my whole life. I'm 41. It was like Mufasa sitting with Simba and saying, don't go over there. That's how it felt when I went to Bellevue. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm in Bellevue. Look at these buildings. Shelly, we going to the 15th floor? Like, that's what it felt like I was not supposed to be there. And Shelly said, no, you go be there. You let them know why you're there. And I'm talking to all these stakeholders. And I'm letting them know it's great that you write a check, but when you don't know where your money is going, what was the point of you ever writing that check outside of a pat on the back? Go to where your money is being spent so you understand why you sent it there in the first place. Allow yourself to be involved and embedded into that community. Let those kids see you. Let them see that you would rather play basketball with them than write them a check from 60 miles away. I guarantee you they would sleep knowing that I played basketball with the CEO of a company that I didn't even know existed in my community. But he came out, he was a part of this. He was beneficial because now I have somebody that I could look up to. A lot of us in the communities of color, it's hard for us to believe in other visions because those that look like us and successful in those spaces do not come back home. When they make it out, they stay out. And so for all of us, we have to come back to our communities and show them that there's opportunity. There's no reason to leave your community to live in your community. If that's how we need to keep our future here, we need to be at the forefront showing you can be successful, you can live a great life, you can raise your family in the community that you were born in poverty. There is no color in poverty. We were all broke at one point or another. I was broke with all my white friends, my Asian friends, my Mexicans. We were all broke together. But we all stayed here and we are continuously moving as a community. So when we say community engagement, it's not a title, it's not a job description. This is work, this is life, this is heart. Be about your community because that's all your community knows is your voice because they believe in you.
And if Lawrence were here today, he did send some notes and he talks about when it comes down to how we educate and how we inform. He talked about the suppression and how European history is the only non-US history course available in our schools. And he also goes into talking about the way things are categorized. And so these are the things that we have to continue to contend against, but also shifting that back to community and the importance of lived experience, to Drea's point, and that lessons have to be learned outside of the classroom as well as in the classroom, right? You have that heuristic way of thinking, the way we do business. This is the test. These are the questions to the state exam. You got to know this history in order for us to tell you that you're smart enough to move forward to the next grade. That's the only history we want you to know, and that's the only history we're writing. Well, I'm here to tell you, if we keep you keep sharing the wrong history to your children, yellow, black, white, or brown, they're gonna get mad at some point because you keep lying. You're not being honest. You don't want them to know the realities of the history so they can reset the future. Let them make those decisions. Or you're shameful. I'm ashamed of what our family did. Well, you didn't do it. It might be in your family, but you didn't do it. So how do we embrace the future in a way from an educational standpoint where that lived and learned experience could be a both and an and. A both and an and. There is not a one-way street to shifting change in mindset. First, you have to embrace the truth. The truth is, it's a problem. It was an issue. That's the truth. But the reality of the changes that are happening have been so powerful and shifting. And so I want to talk about how does that impact our quality of life, how we're living today. Are we still relishing in that crabs in a bucket mentality? Drea, I'm gonna go to Brandon, then Drea. But Brendan, what does that mean when you're talking about how we bring e-commerce, education, how is all of this impacting the quality of life, within our communities?
Yeah, I mean, just even going to your point about this kind of crabs in the bucket mentality, and I think someone just said it in the chat. I think it was Tim. Just sometimes people forget where they are from when they get to a certain place, right? And we have been conditioned, and a lot of times, as I would say, as Black people, to you have to get to this place, and once you get to this place, you are, we're taught to bring others with you, but with the way things have been set up for us, it makes it difficult for us to be able to do that, right? We get to a place and we are doing really well, and we accept it, right? But we have to continue push on these things. Why aren't we seeing more people that look like us at the table? Why aren't we creating more opportunities for folks that that look like us, right? When we get a seat at the table, that's for us to make sure somebody else comes right along with us. And it does affect us, right? And this is just being transparent. I've been in spaces to where it felt like I was fighting against my own brother to, for an opportunity, right? And it's because we've been taught, oh, we got to get this, you got to get that, and this makes you better, and we have to get out of that mindset. I'm better because Jeff is doing his thing. I'm better because Drea is doing her thing, right? And that's how we have to start thinking about this work. We are sharpened by each other, right? And that's the mindset that we really need to have, is that I'm better when I'm working with Michael. I'm better when I'm leaning on Tamar. I'm better when we are really looking at the skill set that each person brings to the table, and not looking at it from this view of competition, right? I think that is what has held us back, is that we're not in competition with each other. We need to be able to work together to be able to move forward. Also, it will continue to impact us as a community.
Thank you. Drea?
You know how I feel, Brendan. I'm like, yes. So I think what Brendan's talking about is that abundance mindset versus the scarcity mindset, right? So I want to read a little quote that really perfectly sums up how I feel about everything. And then I'll talk more, I'll kind of piggyback off what Brendan was saying, but Robert Thurman says, "Don't worry about what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive." So when I think about, my first induction into sort of like corporate America, I remember I had to straighten my hair, not a hair out of place. I had to wear a blazer. I had to spend a ton of money on clothes I could not afford to feel like I could even step into a room to have a meeting with somebody, right? That white perfection, that meritocratic society, that, all of these things that have sort of created that bubble of supremacy that all of us are sort of knocking up against. That's the thing we have to pop. And the only way to do that is by doing you, right? So there's two books that come to mind. I see a bunch of books being, one of them is called Do You by Russell Simmons. When we're on that thread about FUBU and all that, Russell Simmons reminds me of that day too. His book, Do You, he's a great example of a Black person who's able to elevate. Now, his generation will still kind of be in that indoctrinated, have to shed these parts of you, and you still can't quite look back too far, right? You can't reach back too far, and your checks need to be made from 60 miles away, right? But there's still a lot of nuggets in there that help remind us that, like, hey, our happiness, our purpose, our fulfillment, our intention, those things actually do matter. And when we are in those spaces of flow and of creativity and of literally creating, right? If we're made in the image of God and He's a creator, then we have to create too. Otherwise we die, right? These are the things that come to mind for me when we talk about what do we do now? It's about investing in ourselves, right? When we talk about the community engaging and all of these other like external things that we feel like need to amalgamate in some significant way, what we're really talking about is, how do I come into position with myself, and how do I utilize my own integrity with those who align in my value set? instead of why am I sitting here banging on the doors of justice and banging on the doors of equity and fairness and all these things, when in reality, there's actual people involved in those things that just don't align with my value sets. And so the more that I invest in myself, in my family, in my home, in my, everything, the more I become in alignment with those who align with me. And all of us are talking about abundance. All of us are in meetings where, hey, our next action step is closing the deal, right? And I think that, putting that investment forefront is really where we start to see that breakdown of, hey, it has to be done this way or else you're not valid or you don't deserve or whatever the case is. And being intentional really is my remedy to the chaos, right? And feeling like nothing ever changes. Obviously, I've sat in that, on that boat for a long time with a lot of people. The crabs in a bucket thing, whoo, gets me right there. But the truth is being intentional in myself. It gives me the patience to know that I may not see the changes that I dream of in my lifetime, but I remember and value that I'm living the changes and dreams of my ancestors, of my elders, of my parents, right? And it takes atomic change to get there. Like, it's not just oh, hey, broad stroke, let's all get in a room. There's some Black people, there's some disabled people, there's, all these people who are going to make it happen. No, it takes atomic change. And that's the second book that I recommend to this group today. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he uses a lot of science to talk about how little microscopic changes that you make in your life add up. And it's just super easy. So I think if we were all, of course, the big picture is always going to be there. Being aware of it is extremely important, but how we deal with it, it does come down to an atomic level, right? It comes down to individual investment and how we take care of and show up for ourselves before we come to the table with anyone else.
I think that is powerful, and it really makes me want to dive into the inequities in our racial wealth gap. And, we've heard a lot about land trusts being created. People have finally figured out the math. People have finally figured out, how does a wealthy person build generational wealth? Where does that come from? Why haven't we been able to sustain over time our generational wealth? Why haven't we realized that we don't want to own and buy the block? We want to buy the land that the block sits on. Because then when they come in to try to, gentrify, they got to go through us, and it doesn't matter what the price is. It's either you're partnering or you're not in, So we want to buy the block. We want to build generational wealth. We want to start stacking it and gaining and building compound interest. Land trust is one way to do that, because when you own the land, you control things. It's a powerful piece it's a powerful mindset to have. So when you think about shifting the mindset, I don't want to pay anybody rent. When you buy a house and that house is being built on that land, you got to pay for the land that the house is being built on, right? You're not just paying for the house. The lot is $10,000. That's a part of the price, right? So Jeff, let's shift a little bit. Let's talk about that racial wealth gap. Let's shift a little bit. And then anybody can jump in here. I think Zachora is still on here, but I really want to hear from some of our financial minds. If you have some say as well after Jeff comments, let's jump in here and talk about the racial wealth gap. Jeff?
We could absolutely converse for weeks about this great subject. There's so much, it's so multi-layered, so deep, it's so damn complicated. And yet, what I will say, I have so much that I want to just dig into. What I will say is that I'm encouraged, or I want to encourage, I'll say that, more folks that are in every space to start thinking about what to do different. When I think about the racial wealth gap and I think about what's happening with gentrification, if you've heard me speak before, one of the things I say I haven't heard anybody else say before, but no part of the civilization over any part of time has figured out how to thwart gentrification. It is not a thing. We don't know how to do it wholesale. There are efforts and there's lots of different ideas, but we as a species, one species, we don't know how to do it, right? So being able to have diversity in thought, having all these different thought leaders and thinking about how do we do something different? For example, we're talking about anti-displacement. We're looking at Hilltop. So I have so many partners that I'm looking at your faces that are part of this effort. Hilltop is one, There's 900 plus streets named MLK in the United States. And if you live on one of them, it is very likely that you are low income, impoverished, and Black, right? Not a surprise probably for most, but part of the idea when it comes to the racial wealth gap, and part of my life is dedicated at this point to near-term solutions to that. We're looking at home ownership, and we're looking at fighting bootstrappers, right? This idea that we're all baked in, that if you're not doing well, it must be something that you're not squared away with. Really come to grips with the fact that you did not earn, whoever you are, it's unlikely that you earned or you deserve your property that you came up in. There were opportunities, particularly, I won't even go to the history because a lot of y'all know the history, but there are opportunities that your forebears had, and that set you up, period, right? If you want to talk about it, more about that, and that's not shame on you. That doesn't mean, this is connected to white privilege also. I have privilege. We all have privileges just being in here right now, but that doesn't mean that you rot what you're in, right? There's positionality, you're fortunate to be in this space. And so part of the idea as we move forward, and we're talking about the racial wealth gap and solutions to it, doing different things and getting out of zero-sum game so that we can understand and allow our minds to think other people deserve to do well also, right? And so when you're looking at 1105 MLK, there's lots to learn. I'll have some links that are available for this too. Having the opportunity in the future for 60% AMI home ownership in the fastest selling market in the United States for the last couple of years, right? That doesn't even compute, that's crazy talk. 60% AMI, having a Black prioritization, and to have first right of refusal for a particular, a city sanctioned, HUD sanctioned first right of refusal for a nascent population. That's thinking different. That's doing something different to make sure that it's not the case that 4-generation deep Hilltop families have to leave because they can't afford transit-induced displacement because the link's coming up the hill. And I want to make it clear, that's not bad. The link coming up the hill isn't bad. It's that our civilization, we don't know how to thwart market forces that displace people. We don't know how to do that yet. Wherever those things happen, people have to bounce. So keeping it short, because I said I can get into lots of things with this. When it comes to racial wealth gap, my fervent hope for everyone that hears this is that we all take it seriously. My white colleagues, this is you too. Black history is American history. We need you, we need us, we need everyone, all the spectrum of whatever kind of positionality or whatever kind of demographic situation you ally with or that represents you or identify with. We need you to come to the table and understand this is you too. It affects you. I could go so deep, y'all, but I just want to give you that simple message that racial wealth gap, that's not something over there. This is for you. And we can make a decision here locally. I always talk about, in conclusion, the R word, right? As soon as you say the R word, people start getting crazy. Reparations, oh shit, like you don't want to, did he just say the word, right? I would suggest to you that there are lots of different things that we can do in the spirit of reparations. And a lot of that has to do with thinking differently and understanding that other people deserve good things too. I'll just keep it simple that way.
Thank you. I see Carlos, and then after Carlos, Michael.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for sharing. And can you see me?
Yes, we can see you now.
Excellent. So thank you, everyone, for sharing what you've shared here today. I really appreciate it. And one of the things that I do focus on is wealth creation and wealth management. So I want to share some of my own experiences and how I was able to create wealth for myself and my family. One of the things is definitely mindset. That's number one, right? Whether you think you can or you think you can't, right? Either way, you're right. So I grew up in extreme poverty, right? In the ghettos of East LA and also South Central. And first off, I had to take myself out of that environment, right? That was pretty much the first step. Second, I had to go from negativity to positivity, right? And then also being able to go from scarcity to abundance. right? And then it was a long process, right? I really had to break away from the mental chains that were placed on me, even my own parents, society, right? My environment, right? Other racist people. So I had to defeat, right, those self-fulfilling prophecies. And then after that, I understood how money worked, right? One of the biggest differences between wealthy people and poor people is how they use their money, right? Poor people spend their money, wealthy people invest their money, right? So they actually make their money work for them, right? Property, precious antiques, art, right? Businesses, right? Things that will make you money, not things like, superficial materialistic things, right? A sports car, right? Things that are liabilities. One book that I highly recommend is it's Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? It teaches about that concept and it teaches you how money works in today's society, right? And that's really what it boiled down to. And then just working hard, right? Not being a victim, right? Saying, you know what? I'm not giving away my power. I am who I am, right? I don't need permission from anybody, right? I set my goals. If I want to be a millionaire or a billionaire, that's up to me. I make a plan, I execute that plan, and I make it happen, right? A burning desire, right? And then also executing a plan that will help you get there, right? Wishes do not create wealth, right? Wealth is intentional. You need to have a plan on how you're going to achieve that wealth, right? So just wanted to share that with everybody. Definitely connect with me. I'm Carlos with Zeta Maya Entertainment. And again, I really appreciate what everybody has shared here today.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. You said wishes are not wealth. I think we just need to write that down. Can you put that in the chat, sir? Put that in the chat. Michael Jordan.
Hey, how's it going? I was inspired to speak. This is a topic near and dear to my heart. Actually have been steeped in a few books related to the subject. So and Drea shared something before, and she said something in a chat, and I was like, oh yeah, that's the thing. And it's a concept from what is her name? Heather McGee, who wrote the book The Sum of Us. And I'm trying to think of the phrase. What is it? Now that I'm trying to talk, it's gone. But it's the solidarity dividend. The unknown opportunity and wealth and impact that diverse groups working together create. Another thing is, what do they call the decision-making ladder? In the book, she shares about how policy and anything related to bringing up the whole community often gets, it gains a negative impact whenever race or Black people are mentioned. And that's an underlying thing that has to be understood. There's a phrase or a philosophy that she uses called the zero-sum game, and acknowledging that that's something that could be in place within people within the community, and something that impacts the ability of certain communities to gain wealth or develop it is a huge part of the conversation. Also, I'm sharing some resources. The video I shared in the chat is done by the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, or all the Federal Reserve banks came together and did a series called Racism and the Economy. And it's a 10-part series. It's all on YouTube. You just look it up, and they go through all the different areas: education, financial services. One of the most impactful ones for me was focus on the wealth gap. They have the author of The Color of Money, who shares about all those different things and the impacts. There's a lot that I see. I can see expressions, I can see faces on the screen, people who may know what's going on, or people who may not know what's going on, or in the process of learning. I highly recommend that you dive into all of that, because you can see that there is a group that has been given wealth, which allowed them to get to the point where they are today. And there's a group that's been denied it, and it's been stolen in the places where they built up community to preserve and put that all together. It's been literally destroyed systemically and purposefully and repeatedly. So that information is crucial to this conversation in the context. And I invite everyone to check out that video, that series, because it's sobering. I'll say that. But it's all in the chat. Thank you for letting me talk, Shelly. Appreciate it. I'm sorry I didn't put my hand down fast enough.
Oh, no, I got you. I got you. I saw whole construction. You have your hand up. No problem. Thank you for what you just shared, Michael. Thank you so much for those resources too.
Thank you for calling on me, Shelly. My name is Jesse Baines. Just want to thank everyone for being here today and sharing their stories. And it's so powerful. And, you know, I think it takes this type of discussion to create change in the community. And I'm excited just to be listening to such powerful speakers. Have to give a shout out, you know, to Brendan and Jeff, and of course, my better half, Drea. You guys are just very powerful with the messages that you bring. And, you know, when we start talking about, you know, the wealth gap and building wealth within disenfranchised communities, that just really touches home for me and always brings up a little bit of emotions, you know, so it's not easy for me to discuss because it touches me so deep. And, you know, a lot of the work that I've been doing in the construction is really working to help people build wealth so they can have prevailing wage jobs, you know, $35, $45 an hour, and really be able to take care of their families. And some of the things that, you know, I've really came across in the past couple of years, there's a book, The Black Tax, and it talks a lot about the 2% of what African Americans have received from the financial institutions or from America since, you know, slavery. And a lot of that, you know, relates to stewardship, ownership, and legacy when we're talking about the individual perspective on building wealth, right? You know, because stewardship leads to ownership, which in turn creates a legacy. And a lot of times folks don't know this information, right? And it's not something that's out there readily available for people to learn. And so that's something that we work with a lot of the people in our community on is how do you build stewardship? How do you utilize your resources to the best of your ability? Understanding cash flow is essential, right? And your success depends on cash flow. Understanding that ownership is paying off debt, right? Owning things outright so that you don't owe anything. So your debt to income ratio is extremely high. And then of course, being able to own things so that you can give them to your family, right? Through a legacy. And this is something that I think is so important. But I think the other aspect of it is how do we work to help government entities to see how they've played a role in building wealth in America, right? Through land grants, through housing loans, through business loans, through government support. They've helped certain groups become wealthy and have left me groups out for over hundreds of years, right? So how do we continue to bring light to the importance of government entities providing these kinds of financial resources to those communities that have been disenfranchised, right? And we can talk about some really innovative, creative ideas, right? Like baby bonds for you know, disenfranchised communities where a child receives a specific amount of money in a savings account until they're 18 and provides them with a specific amount of wealth, right? So that will give them something to start, not from zero or from below zero, right? In debt. A lot of times we see our kids coming into the 18, 19-year-olds, they're in debt. And I just really think we can do more to shed light on that and to create these kinds of programs to build wealth. And I think that there are, and I want to express the great work that's being done in our community because there's definitely a desire and a passion for people to make change in the city of Tacoma. But unfortunately, we're at a point still where we look back and we haven't moved very far from where we were. So there has to be a change in the methods that we've been doing it, or else we're going to continue to only receive less than 2% of the wealth in America, and it's just not right. So I just thank you for giving me the time to speak, and I look forward to all of you folks continuing to do your great work in the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for speaking. Thank you. You know you got it. I'm with you. I got you. I have a question. So Miss Mandy Lee is firing up our chat. Mandy, come on the screen. Come on the screen now. You don't lit this chat up. Now, I want you to express what you're saying because you have lit the chat up. Now we reading what you're saying, but I think it'll be more powerful if you could just express that for us, and how you're feeling in this moment, especially in what your last comment was around racial wealth gap and what we need to talk about to create alternative methods. Do you want to share more about your thoughts before we transition?
Thank you. I am an introvert, so this is highly uncomfortable. And I'm also wearing a, pardon my language, big ass blanket hoodie. So I'm not gonna turn on my camera.
So it's 2022, nobody's judging you. We get it, no judgment. And thank you for sharing your words. And you don't have to cut your camera on, but you good, go ahead, we got you, share.
So I will not proclaim to be an expert, but I work with the Centers for Strong Families Network, which is an organization of 8 or 9 nonprofits that come together, and we talk about the racial wealth gap. We talk about inequities in financial status and economic status across Pierce County. And one of the things that my financial coaches, especially, I don't think she's here, Deanna from Tacoma Community House, one of the things that she's always talking about is the fact that a lot of our immigrant families are coming to us with different ideas, different backgrounds in financial well-being. And so they come to our communities and they're facing inequities simply because of who they are and where they're coming from and how they look at money. And so when we're talking about the racial wealth gap, I want to challenge us to think about how are other communities building wealth for themselves, and especially in Black and Brown communities who focus on the group as a whole. Mm-hmm. How do we elevate each other so that we as a group, as a community, can gain wealth and to gain power? It's a really interesting idea that stems from the exact opposite of the patriarchal white supremacist society in which we live in, right? Which is very much based on the individual elevating and becoming more powerful. But in a lot of Black and Brown communities, the focus is on the community, on the neighborhood. And Hilltop is an excellent example of that. The Puyallup tribe, excellent example of that, where you have people who have a common background, a common need, a community who work together to improve each other's lives. And we need to think about wealth and how we are helping one another increase their wealth by, like I said, helping one another.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Mandy. Introvert and all, hoodie and all, we accept you. We are so good. So I want to circle back around and kind of try to, make this a 360 moment. We're going to go back to your statements in mind for the future. We're going to circle back around. And Drea, is there any other things that you've heard today that would make you want to even enhance on your statement in mind for the future?
Oh, you don't want me to go there yet. I'll take this whole thing. It will be like a 3-hour event. But I will say, for my husband and I, our son is definitely our why. His big old brain, we're like, whoa, we got to invest a lot of money into this person, And so it's really, obviously we want to be comfortable and be able to move in the world, but seeing our child and understanding the future that he's moving into, we just want to build the pathway for it so that when he gets there, he's not bombarded by a lot of the things we were. It took us decades, right, to get to a place where we can now kind of reach back and pull people up with us. But our kid has to be far ahead of that. And so I think that, when we're talking about racial wealth gap, we've got to do a couple things differently. We've got to invest the time into learning about money and how it's traditionally worked so that we can break that system for ourselves, right? Like, we can't go up against these $1 trillion juggernauts with like, I'm going to make, waste beads and it's going to be successful. Like, no, we got to figure out how do we get those waste beads to market, who influences, like, all of the still the same elements are there, but how do we understand it well enough to break it, right? So.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And you could go on and on and on, but we'll have our separate moment with that. We'll have our separate moment with that. Thank you so much, Brendan. As we circle back around, has your statement in mind for the future expanded or changed at all?
It hasn't, but this entire conversation has inspired me, and I think for others to be inspired just to learn and not to be afraid of what will come out of this, right? A friend of mine often says discomfort is comfort growing, and we have to be uncomfortable with these kind of conversations and able to, in order for us to be able to be in a place to hear and to learn. And so as I'm looking at all the videos that have been shared through the chat, the books, the resources, was highly encouraging folks to do a deep dive, do a deep intentional dive into what is being shared. That's the only way we're able to move forward and to really lean into the folks who are on the panel and to those who are sharing. Again, going back to, we are all experts in what we do. And so I think it's extremely important in order for us to know where we want to go. We have to understand where we've come from as a community. That's something that's really important to me. Jeff and Drea and I talk about this all the time about just Hilltop in particular. That's my home. That's where I grew up. And oftentimes we don't know the stories and the history that has kind of set the tone for why people feel the way they feel about the Forterra site that was purchased and the trauma that was along with that. It wasn't just about it being a grocery store. It was about something being put into a community that was not needed, was not necessary, without the voices of the community being heard and the history that went along with that. Putting a fence around it in a community that people will always consider as a dangerous neighborhood. And so I just encourage us to be learners and just to be uncomfortable with some of the things that are going to come. And that's the only way we're able to grow. So.
Wow, thank you for that. Jeff, has anything come up for you or resonated new with you for your statement in mind for the future?
There's something that as we got together to work on this panel that I attribute to Drea Baines that I thought was really cool. This notion of community genius, right? It speaks to a lot of what so many have said. This idea that against the expert model, which has been par for the course forever. You come in and you do development, and because I have this title and we have the money and you're welcome, we're going to make this because you need it. You need to be like everybody else, build it, and maybe give you, if you're lucky, some token form of engagement, and then peace, see you. You should do well with what we gave you because we're the best, right? The idea of going against that and doing it in a way that is really grassroots, that's really local. We talk all the time. We were having a deep conversation last night, B and I, about George P. Riley, this man that mere years after the Emancipation Proclamation, this man came from Boston, Black man. George Putnam Riley bought what we know today, about the 67 acres that we know today as Hilltop. And that started a 150-year strong legacy of Blackness in the Pacific Northwest. It is precious, right? You cannot say that in very many places at all, even West Coast, period, right? So this idea that we have, there's so much, we have good bones to work with. Now, with that said, I think everyone that has spoken seems like would agree with the, down with the expert model. Let's go with community genius. Let's do something different. Let's use all this knowledge. We know more than we've ever known before, right? But a lot of the things that we do, it's not about reinventing strategies. It's about new sandwiches, right? It's new layers, new recipes, right? And so my warning, and no one really spoke to this in particular, but it just occurred to me, the romanticizing of high end. When we talk about wealth is not, I encourage folks not to think about like, well, you need to have investment property. Yeah, all that's good. Passive income, do all those things, right? Let's talk about having a damn living wage job and access pathways to that are sustainable. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about having just savings, right? That's probably the number one thing you have your income savings. And then let's get to real estate. There's a pyramid. It's not rocket science. It's not anything that's even new, but no one really talks about that because it's not sexy. And I would encourage folks, I'll chime in with what Mandy said so eloquently. You have resources here. I'm looking at Tim Jumper right now. And I know my man has just firepower. There are things you have a neighborhood financial center in Hilltop. Use it. You got amazing people at Goodwill that, talked about Deanna at TCH. They're here, they're around. And what I would encourage, and I really kind of have variations on the same theme, use all these things. There's so many things that we could have talked about. We could go deep in like 7 million different ways, right? But the idea of, I hope that this group, as powerful as you are, as charismatic and just knowledgeable as you are, hone together. Let's come together more. And I'm really aware of how like that sounds trite and we always say that, but I mean it as heartfelt. Come together, everyone, and think, and let's understand one another better from a resource perspective, because the legacy is real. It is so damn powerful if we allow it to become, like, we need to understand. I hope that Michael Jordan, who's fire, and Lynn Willis know each other, and also Deanna, and also Sarah Irish, also fire. You know what I mean? Everyone coming together, but actually understanding what all the players can do. And then we can do things like what Drea was talking about, and Brendan, this idea of we know we compete for some of the same dollars, and some of it, frankly, is accidental, because we don't know that our homie nonprofit is going for the same money. Let's figure out some ways to not do that anymore. How do we make sure that we are standing tall and being strong in these different pillars, but also what other players are and how we play well together in the sandbox?
Excellent. Man, that was just masterful. I see, Suzanne, you have your hand up. I want to go ahead and recognize you. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Shelley. I want to really appreciate Jeff for what he just shared, and kind of share what I know from the Asian American immigrant experience, having kind of come to the United States and lived in poverty for first half of my life. And I share this story not to kind of say like, oh, even though there's like racism, we can overcome kind of with bootstrapping. But I think that, what everybody has shared is really powerful in the sense that we can work together to overcome institutional racism, and we can let that not stop us. So I know that a lot of the Asian American small businesses faced a lot of discrimination in getting loans from banks, and probably to this day as well. And so they really kind of set up their own alternative loan systems for each other, with small amounts, like, like $500, $200 that they would pay off to each other. And it was like not an official bank. But I think that, and my parents actually participated in that to launch our donut shop, because they couldn't get a loan. And what I learned from that lesson is the concept of time. I think that one of the things that I would love for us to work together is to kind of share this notion that we can work together on a 30-year plan, 50-year plan. Like, we don't always have to think in some of such short-term things, because everyone here knows about the effect of compounded investments, right? Like, you can save small amounts of money, but over 30 years, that becomes really powerful. And that's actually much more powerful sometimes than trying to get like big amounts of money and trying to do things in the short term. And I think, I think if we can kind of have that concept, I think that's what can create the intergenerational wealth transfers and things like that. So thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Oh my gosh. And what I love what you said, I'll put it in my wrap up, but that concept of time. That's it there. I see you, Miss Sarah Irish. I yield the floor to you, ma'am.
So I totally agree what Suzanne shared. And the other thing that I would like to ask is that we can work together, the longest people willing to mentorship, have a mentorship for the new immigrants. The system is set up in a very different way. The wealth is no part of their life project. And Jeff mentioned the savings. Savings sometimes is a luxury for many people because they just surviving. So they don't have enough to save anything. Everything goes to the survival. So maybe those that are fortunate and they have the capacity and the knowledge to mentor and teach. I think that's one of the biggest failures in our community. There is a lot of programs that support business of color and everything, but they need to start from the basics. When, like basics, how the system works, what is different from where you're coming from to here. And even buying a house and renting, the system is totally different, even for renters, where people coming from the countries where the honor system is what it rules. And here is everything so legal and so different that people have a lot of issues dealing with landlords and banks and all these other things and getting loans. And so maybe like the mentorship program start from the very basic to help and promote wealth and teaching them that everything is possible.
Thank you so much. That is so key. Historically, working as a village, working as a community, and creating your own sustainable system because you already knew there were barriers against you. You figured out how to work together to build your own communities, right? And that does it. What I'm hearing is that mindset needs to be revived while we still yet create that long-term plan. Tamara, I see your hand is up. I yield the floor to you, sir.
Oh man, when just listening to this is just absolutely amazing. But I think when I'm listening to things, I think about the analogy of just like the fence. In our community, the Black community especially, we have a wood fence that's been around our community, and we only know what's inside of that community. A lot of our colleagues, they don't know what happens in our communities. The communities of colors, we have this one huge fence built around us, and we fight each other to look through the little thin cracks to see all the greatness happening in the white communities that we can't get to. And as we started talking about, equity, the wood fence was removed, but it was surprise, there was a chain link fence. We can all see more, so we don't got to fight each other because we can see more going on the other side of the fence. But it was for us to know what's happening over there. We were never meant to have what's happening across that fence line. And so for me, I need my colleagues, especially the white colleagues that have the access, that have the power, that can change a lot of these things. I really need you to leave the table, stand up, grab your tools and break that fence down in public, not in the middle of the night where we wake up and, hey, oh my God, where'd the fence go? Like, I need you guys to break that fence down, like right now in front of everybody, to let them know, no, we're changing everything and I'm going to run with them. I'm going to give access. We're going to make this happen. Do it publicly. It's great to do things behind the scenes, but you know what? We need to see it done publicly so we know that this is real, that you are there for us, that you are breaking this fence down because you don't care what the outcome looks like, because you know it's hard. It's hard. And we're here. When we talk about, hey, we got to have family wage jobs. Family wage jobs mean so many things for different people. $18 an hour, that's family wage for a teenager coming out of high school that maybe wants to go try to live on their own. That's not $18 an hour, is not a family wage job for a single parent with 4 kids. That it doesn't exist. So when we're putting these job descriptions out there, start making the job description to where it is beneficial and true to what it is that you're truly trying to do. Is it a family livable job? Yes or no? Be honest about it. Ask yourself these things. Take the barriers down with education. Is education needed? Yes or no? Be honest about it. Not because you have the education, but does your organization need the education? Ask yourself these things as leaders, as managers, as hiring managers, as HR. Are these things truly needed, or are we doing it because they and them told us to? We are the now and us. We are able to change these things. We miss so much. We miss so much potential because of these barriers that we sit and continue from generation to generation to generation. If you are in HR and you still believe that education is the only way that your organization can be successful, I'm sorry, you need to do some more research, because there are stars out there. There are entrepreneurs that have been made in the last 2 years that are billionaires, and your organization is still asking for a degree. You got to ask yourself, if it's needed, great. Why is it needed? And how is that degree or that education going to be implemented to make your organization the greatest possible? And if you can't answer that question, then just go be great. Ask yourself, can it be done? Can it be trained internally? Can we train this person internally? And if you cannot, then you have to ask yourself as a leader, why are you a leader? Why are you that person making those decisions if you cannot bring someone else to be better than you? Ask yourself these things. When we talk about the next generation, ask yourself, are we doing what really needs to be done for our children? Ask that. It's not about college. It's not about where you're going. It's about where they want to go and how we are going to support them through our stories, through our journeys, through our visions, and through our successes. It's no longer about us. What we're doing right now is to make sure that they don't have to go through it anymore. It's to make sure my children don't have to go through this. Your children don't have to go through this. Your nephews, your aunts, your nieces, whatever that looks like. Be honest with yourself. 2022 for me is the year of high expectation, and I'm pushing it on every last one of you guys. I expect more out of every one of you this year. We don't have the excuse of COVID anymore. We don't have the excuse of relief fund anymore. I'm asking you, what are you doing to better what we are getting ready to do, and why we are trying to do this work? It's so that way we do not have to struggle. We don't have to be in panic. We don't have to be hurt anymore. We are tired of being hurt. And for my white allies, my white colleagues, this does not mean that you cannot complain in this sandbox, but understand that you're going to get socked in your mouth. You're going to get hurt. You're going to get called out. Understand that. And if you can't play in the field and get up after you got your lip busted, maybe this ain't the work that you need to be in, because it's not nice work. Understand that you will be hurt mentally, emotionally, and physically. You will be hurt. But God damn it, I appreciate you guys taking those punches for us. I appreciate what you guys do for this community. I appreciate you giving us access in every way that you can. But it has to no longer be about you. It has to be about this community. It has to be about the truth around what is going on right now. And that's why this work is so important. And that's why everyone that's on this phone call right now, white, Black, Asian, Puerto Rican, Filipino, it does not matter. Bottom line, at the end of the day, we are all humans. And if you can't wake up knowing that you are a good human being at the end of the day, then that's some self-reflection that you need to make on your own. But I believe in every last one of you. I need every last one of you. And so I'm calling you to higher expectations. Don't take it like I'm being rude. Don't take it like I'm being wrong. I just know the best in every last one of you. And that's why I support and I run with every last one of you. So when I get in your ass, it's because I know that I can get more out of you, and I want that from you. Take the punches, because we've been taking them for generations and centuries. And you know what? We are still here. We are still a beautiful people, and it's time to make this a beautiful community.
Thank you. Thank you. Drea, sis, I see you. I will yield the floor to you. Thank you, Tamar.
Yeah, well, now I'm like, what, how do I follow that? But I will. What Tamar is saying matters. And I think that sometimes we just have to simplify it all, right? And so I brought this book that my husband bought for my son that we've been reading lately called Your Legacy, a bold reclaiming of our enslaved history. And instead of saying like, oh, you know, they came through, they didn't have nothing, they were stolen and put on boats and stuff, it actually uses these like really big words to say like, no, our intellect is what helped us create languages to speak together. We escaped slavery sometimes through learning how to read and write, sometimes through, and music was like a big one, right? Because it connected them back to Africa. And now we can see, like, when you read a book like that and you reclaim your history, you reframe it, instead of seeing, you know, oh, Black people are on crack and in the ghettos and they don't have opportunity. We instead see, oh, these are people who have been systematically ripped from their past for exploitation purposes and have now been relegated into these areas of our society where they can be exploited and extracted from, but not invested in, right? And so those things, like if we aren't real about the fact that, hey, like Tamar said, we're still here. You know, watching videos like one that was shared today, I always get teary-eyed. I always get emotional just thinking about the fact that, like, I'm still here, you know? My dad is not. I never got a chance to meet my father because this system robbed him of me, right? And I'm still here. I'm still doing this work. It's been proven for centuries that despite the segregation of our people, the bruises and lashes to our bodies, the stealing of our intellectual property, like we are still effing here. And if you're not with us, you're against us, and we don't have space for it anymore. And it's very simple to do this work, but we can't have barriers anymore. And a lot of us, especially those of us in this panel right now, we're not in a space anymore to just come and talk, right? Like we're about the rubber meeting the road, or we're going to encourage you to go and do some more learning, right? Before you come back to us. Because right now, if we're not talking about money, if we're not talking about education, if we're not talking about a pipeline to not only develop, but retain our talent, then we're continuing to perpetuate the status quo that is all these federal dollars going into these places where they're just sitting there researching through the lens at us, right? So I just want to leave on that note that we are still here. We are still excellent. We are superhuman at this point. It's been proven through my child. I believe it now. And I'm super thrilled and very humbled and honored to be in these types of spaces, to be able to share. What I'm saying to all of you today is not something that I would have said to you 2 years ago. I would have maintained that status quo right alongside of all of you. I grew up in Bellevue, Washington. Tamar, my bad brother, but you know, I'm from Bellevue. I went to the private schools, although I was, you know, in poverty and on scholarships, and I saw what it was on the other side. And I act as sort of a bridge between worlds because I have such proximity to white wealth, and I have proximity to white wealth that does want to close that racial wealth gap with us. There's a lot of baby boomers with a lot of money right now who actually do want to do something significant with their lives as they're awakening. And so if we can tap into that and be intentional and make sure that we're coming to the table whole and able to say things now that we didn't say 2 years ago, then we will start to see this needle move in a pretty significant way.
Powerful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Wow. We learned a lot today. We heard a lot today. I just want to thank each and every one of the panelists who gave of their time to, let's just give them a round of applause. Let's just, you know, give them some thank yous, shout outs, connections. Oh my goodness. Whenever you are a part of a legacy where laws have to be passed and acted upon to control your very being of who you are. We've heard words today like ownership. We've heard words today of abundance, scarcity. We've heard statements today about this concept of time. We've talked about the power of education. So it's not just what you learn in an institution of learning created for you to only learn about one form of history and one mindset. We've also learned that lived experience is so key and important. Now, locally to Pierce County, we have a city within Pierce County who does not have a record of Black history. It literally does not exist. There is no record of it. Its founder, the reason around the creation of this city, this location, there is no Black history. We are currently, a few of us on this call have come together under the leadership of Jay Marie, one of my sister veterans who's been on this mission in the city of Puyallup to bring about awareness of the fact that that history doesn't exist, but what can we do now in the present to build a better future for what the foresight was not about? And how do we educate this city to change its own perception and its own visual, storylines for the actual majority BIPOC community that actually lives here, that is the majority. We have had straight stakeholders and champions like Carissa, who is at the forefront, y'all. If y'all don't know about, you want to talk about action and passion, I just need y'all to have a coffee meeting with Carissa. She gonna blow your mind, but make sure you bring your energy with you. But J. Marie, if you are on here, I would love for you to come on camera, sis, and talk about Black Puyallup and our Black History Month event that we're putting on here in the city of Puyallup to bring awareness. And then I will close us out so that we can move on with our great and glorious lives.
Let me first say, phew, I have not been with you guys for a while, and I have missed the creativity, the motivation, the energy, the expertise of this amazing task force family. I'm thrilled to rejoin you. And this is my first opportunity to announce what Shelley was talking about. This amazing, exciting community event that she and Jeff Dade and so many of us who live in Puyallup have been planning for the month of February. Puyallup's first ever community-wide Black History celebration. Now, when I say that, it still blows me away that first ever in front of Black History celebration in any town could still be happening, but there it is. It is only one of many cultural celebrations that we're going to be hoping happens in Puyallup in 2022. Our vision to create that interactive event consists of drama, storytelling, multimedia vignettes that celebrate, educate, and build bridges throughout this beloved community. At our first ever celebration, we just want to light up everybody's senses with awe and appreciation. We want to celebrate with a full body experience that appeals to every one of our senses. When you come, you're going to see art. You're going to hear music. You're going to taste and smell good food. And you're going to be touched by the beauty and the brilliance of Black folk in Puyallup. We're going to highlight Black elders in Puyallup, Black youth in Puyallup, Black business in Puyallup, Blacks in the military in Puyallup, Black artists in Puyallup. And you guys, more information is coming starting next week, but I'm just so honored to be here to invite you personally. And I know we've been talking about us coming together and celebrating and supporting each other. And I'm going to ask you right now, when you get that invitation, I want you to come. I want you to be a part of it. I want you to get excited and tell everybody in your network, because like I said, it might be one of the first, but many are to come. It's time, people. And I love you guys. And thank you for being here again and motivating me. And I'm fired up.
Yes, yes. I'm so excited. This has been a labor of love. We've been, under her leadership and she's just been, we've been on this journey together. It's interesting to want to live in a place and build community intentionally, but also you want that community to recognize you. And it was shocking how many of us are actually at the table working on this and how many more of us will grow beyond this. And as she said, it's the first of many multicultural events. And we just want to say thank you ahead of time, J. Marie, for your leadership. And when the links, I see some of y'all are asking for links and information. When that comes out, I'll give it to Tamara, and Tamara shoot it out to this community at large. We want to see you there. It's an experience. I want to say that it's a celebration, but what you're going to have is an experience. We're going to take you on a journey. So it's not just, it's a journey, literally a journey. And we're just going to take you on, a journey of what we know, what was and what will be. So that's where we're taking you. What was, which is a reality, it's a truth, and what will be, and so we're excited for you. And thank you so much, J. Marie, for bringing that. And so bringing us full circle, I want us all to just keep in mind, ask yourself often, what is my statement in mind for the future? How will it change me? How will it change my community? How will I use it? What is your statement in mind for the future? It doesn't necessarily have to be applicable to any particular thing, but once you sit down and you write it down, then you write it down and you read it every day. So some of us meditate, pray, whatever we do in the morning, make that a part of your morning routine or your daily activity so that it's always top of mind. Whatever we plant in the soil, we have to nourish it with something. So we can't just keep having these conversations. I also asked you at the top of this meeting, what are you doing after you leave these spaces? And only a few of you gave me some comments about what you do when you leave these spaces. But I know I'm going to keep asking that question. What do you do when you leave these spaces? And I'm going to want to hear from you. Shelly, I've been doing this. I've been doing that. And so because it's important that you learn how to adapt and overcome, one, we got to overcome the past. We don't have to own it. We weren't a part of it, but we got to overcome it by giving it a name. You call something by its name, you give it life. That means we're embracing it for what it was, but it doesn't mean that that's where we're going and where we're going to stay. You need to understand that. Give that thing life. Don't be afraid to own it. You didn't do it. Give it life. Take that life that you give it now, and you're going to add some more seasoning to the mixture. And that seasoning that you're going to add is going to give it a little bit more flavor. And then you're going to be able to make some adjustments in the taste. Then your palate going to change, which means your mind is changing. How you adapt and overcome the situations is going to change. How you move forward in life is going to change. How you change the way your family dynamic is going to change. I said during the pandemic, if you didn't break everything down to the studs, reevaluate who you were and make some changes, you wasted time. We still have a gift of time. Do the work. And everything and everybody may not stay with you. If they fall off, it's purging season anyway, because planting season is coming. So it's purging season anyway. If they walk away, let them walk away. If they don't want you there, they say, well, you just too much. You don't want to. Okay, I'm not supposed to be here anyway. You will get guidance and you will use discernment on where you need to go. But I want you to know that you have the power to make change happen now. Be the extra seasoning that everybody needs to change their palates, their mindset. And as Drea said 2 years ago, we weren't necessarily having these conversations, but they were happening. But now we're unapologetic for all things and for all people. Tomorrow is the 1 year anniversary of what can be considered one of the worst days in our country's history. As someone who fought for this country, I can't even imagine. Are you serious? So we're going to give life to that because that happened. And that should be a part of your conversations, like 1 year ago to tomorrow. So give life to the past so that we can make our changes in our embrace of what we want to see our future to be. I love you, love and light. I look forward to seeing you again in March. I hope that you take everything you get. We will be sending out a compiled email with all of these amazing resources and links and documents as a follow-up. And I look forward to seeing you put your words and your actions to work. Have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful month. And I will see you again. Love and light. Co-lead, stay on. Co-lead, stay on.
And panel.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you.